Great to have you. Amanda.
Hey everyone, Amanda Martinez. I'm with Artemis Climate Partners. We have a platform that tracks and traces attributes related to activities within the supply chain and utilize the tracking and tracing for ESG reporting. Obviously, the most important of which, or one of the most important of which, is the various commodities. I actually come from the background of utility scale power generation. I'm very deeply involved in the forefront of renewables since 2004, and with transmission and distribution upgrades subsequent to that.
Great, Amanda and Omer. Great, and Amanda, thank you first of all for your patience. How does can you tell us a little bit about how the platform is benefiting disclosure, and also how that may be furthering key regulatory or policy goals?
So to back up just a little bit, I think that one of the things that we all need to take into account is that quite a few people don't understand blockchain yet, right? And I know that quite a few people that we interact with in government really look at it as almost like the dark net, if you can, for lack of better words. And when in fact, really, it's all about transparency. Right. And one of the things that all of us are champions of on this call is of transparency and of being transparent in activities, because that actually drives a considerable amount of value. And, what the SEC has been looking for, and the White House has been looking for as of recently, has been how to figure out what is going on from an ESG perspective within the various activities within large companies and banking institutions. And so what blockchain allows us to do in real time and provides provenance of is to track and trace those activities. And so this will allow people or companies to be able to put auditable activities on their 10Ks, which will then allow them to be able to deal with the risk associated with that, et cetera. And so this is something that the SEC should absolutely be championing, and all of the people that have oversight over the SEC should as well. This is the best case scenario that we've had in probably 40 years to be able to get as close as we can to the truth of what's going on within organizations.
And why was it before blockchain and introducing kind of the capabilities and technology of organizations like yours, why was this so difficult to achieve this type of transparency before?
Well, to be frank with you, quite frankly, the C-suite in a lot of these companies don't have transparency even within their own organizations to be able to track and trace those activities in real time, right? So this is something that the convergence of technologies between AI and blockchain really has put it at the forefront and made it feasible, made it completely cost effective, and reasonable to expect this of their own organization. So, that allows them in turn to be able to report to their shareholders, et cetera, as well as the governmental entities.
That's great. And have you, had the opportunity to start to kind of introduce this to some of the kind of public officials and stakeholders, and what has some of the response been as they've learned about some of these capabilities?
Well, I have a blockchain 101 PowerPoint that I walk through with people, and you'd be surprised at it is incredible when the eyes open and they realize what they can utilize this for. And actually, that I'm not the biggest fan of additional regulation, but they can, they see themselves being able to utilize this to address a whole host of other issues outside of what we're even talking about now. So that's helpful. Once they see, and we can provide business cases that they can say, oh, this is done in my, with my constituents in this area, and I get a benefit because, say, there is somebody in West Virginia who has some natural resources that they'd like to track or trace. That's probably a big benefit to let that person know what this can do, right?
Goals.
And can I
Jeanine, you mentioned,
sorry.
Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I just wanted to say, I think one of the other main goals that the government has been looking to fill has been market participation. Historically, the commodity markets have been, very tightly held by people who can post, $400 million lines of credit, right? And so that creates a bit of a stranglehold on the animal, right? So if we can create access for more people and democratize this, the ability of these platforms to allow more participants in, right? That solves another big key issue that Washington wants to see, allegedly.
And Amanda, have you been observing also some of these sort of incumbent-led activities, and what's your take on what their impact has been?
So I think there's a little bit of irony that's going to happen here, that you have the larger companies that have been operating in silos for quite some time that have platforms set up that they've been dealing in for a considerable period of time. And I don't think this is a copy and paste scenario where we're not just moving things to blockchain because we want to just put things on blockchain, right? We're not going to do the same old thing to spend a lot of time moving it over. I think that one of the things that's going to come out of this new requirement from the Biden administration for reporting is that these larger companies that operate in these silos are going to be requiring their subsidiaries and the smaller entities to be reporting all of this information. And those companies aren't just going to have to report that information in a certain way to that one siloed entity. They're going to actually have to report it across the board. So they will actually, the mid and smaller size suppliers will actually end up driving the way that they collect information and report it to the larger companies, will actually drive the way that those companies intake that information, right? Because those suppliers have to deal with so many different masters. And so they're going to be the ones that targeting that particular market and making sure that they have access and they have the ability to then supply to those siloed organizations. Will make those organizations wake up and say, oh, wow, like these suppliers are, the way that they're explaining to them other people's operations work will help them develop and actually break out of those silos that they have traditionally been in.
Yeah. That's interesting, Amanda, like sort of listening to your comment about the standardization, and then Omer's comment before that about kind of interoperability. They seem like, I don't know if they're kind of cousins, but seems like within an organization, it's sort of hard to get, and you made this observation earlier, it sounds like it can be hard even, within a company, let alone outside it, to get a clear picture of what's going on. And so do you think blockchain is helping to either promote that standardization or interoperability?
Well, absolutely. I think that's the difference, right? So that's the difference between just copying and pasting what is already being done on traditional trading platforms, right? This new model and the new technology that has come into play will allow people to do something very different. The transparency and the ability to track and trace from your supply chain is going to be unparalleled.
Remarkable. One of the things, and I think Omer, you
see that change.
Yeah. So I'm really struck by it's a combination of sort of evolving technological capability, sort of evolving consumer preferences, as well as reflected through political leaders. So kind of a form of social construction as well, and then perhaps having some movers as opposed to all movers. So we don't necessarily have collective action, but kind of the potential for best practices, and then best practices, and consumer preferences eventually driving potentially broader adoption here. So very interesting dynamic.
I think what we're going to see is a combination of two things. I think we're going to see one thing where we've got on this panel, we've got people who are very experienced in the commodities market, and you'll see that larger companies will start reporting that on their 10Ks. They will have very accurate information about a portion of their supply chain, and this will be one of those pieces, right? There will be portions of their supply chain that they don't have such accurate information, and they will grow towards that. They will be able to say on there, this is where we're working towards, and these are the people we're going to work towards that with. Right, so that will be a part of the reporting structure, but I think we're going to chip away at it within the different groups until pretty much the whole pie is full, and corporates do have access to this very accurate and transparent information.
Great. Well, with that, I'd like to thank the panel. Very